Stay tuned as we're going to talk about one of my favorite jobs that I had in this industry and probably one that you would enjoy as well.
Don't hang up that phone. We've found what you're looking for. Welcome to the Let's Talk Cabling podcast with Chuck Bowser, RCDD. What exactly does RCDD stand for? Registered Communications Distribution Designer. Just the expert you need to ensure your cable plant performs exactly as designed. Now, send the new guy to the truck for a bucket of dial tone and the cable stretchers, while you listen to an informative program on telecommunications.
Welcome to the show where we tackle the tough questions submitted by installers, estimators, project managers, operations managers, IT staff, and anybody interested in cabling. We're connecting at the human level so that we can connect the world. If you're watching this show on YouTube, would you mind hitting the subscribe button and the bell button to be notified when new episodes are being released? If you're listening to this podcast on one of our podcast platforms, would you mind leaving us a 5-star rating? That helps us beat that algorithm so we can get this message out to more people and educate, encourage, and enrich the lives of people in the industry. Also, on Thursday nights, we have a live stream on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook called After Hours with Chuck Bowser, RCDD, where you get to ask your favorite RCDD those questions that you've just been wanting an answer to. Thursday nights at 6 p.m. Now, I hear you now, but Chuck, I'm working at Thursday night at 6 p.m. I can't really make it. They're recorded, and all episodes of the podcast and live streams are put on our webpage at www.letstalkcabling.com. So I've been in this industry for over 40 years. I've held a lot of different positions, for everything from the apprentice all the way up to operations manager and everything in between, estimating, project managing, and even QA. One of my most favorite jobs that I had was a QA inspector. Now, very few companies have enough projects to justify having a full QA person on staff all the time. And the company I worked for was the same way. So my function was actually threefold. I wore many hats like most people do in our industry. I was an estimator, a trainer, and a QA inspector as well. And I love doing QA inspections. So I'm going to talk briefly about why you want to do QA inspections, right? Now, QA inspections, there's a lot of negativity about doing QA inspections. Now, don't get me wrong. Any QA inspector who's worth their salt can find something wrong with any project. It's how you deal with that information, whether you make it a successful QA inspection or not a successful QA inspection. I'll dive more into that in a little bit. So by following the QA inspection processes, you're going to do a couple things that's going to make your company look better. It's going to raise your awareness in the industry and your local geographical area that you're competing in. And it's going to help your technicians grow as technicians. It's a win-win-win-win scenario. If you're not doing QA inspections now, even if you're a small little shop with just 2, 3, 4 techs, you should do this. You should do QA inspections. By doing QA inspections, number one, you're going to verify that you did indeed install per the codes, standards, and also the scope of work that was submitted by the customer. Because trust me, if you don't have enough time to do it right the first time, when are you going to have enough time to do it again a second time? Nobody does. Nobody does. And when you roll a truck a second time, a lot of people figure you lose money, and you do lose money, but they forget about the soft costs, right? The hard cost is what you can actually calculate. You can track the amount of hours that guy or that technician was going back to that go back call to fix that. But the soft cost is how much did you lose in customer confidence? The technician who's going back to that job to redo that work the second time, they're supposed to be on a different project making money, making revenue. So you're taking a double hit. So the soft costs are the one that are really hard to calculate, which is another reason why you should do a QA inspection. Again, whether you're a super large company like the one I worked for when I was a QA inspector, or even the smallest of companies in our ICT industry. And here's the best thing, and this is probably what really launched my training career. Performing QAs gives you the opportunity to train and evaluate your staff. You heard me right. It gives you the opportunity to train and evaluate your staff. What do I mean by that? So when you go out and do a QA inspection, we'll talk about this more in a little bit. Instead of, it's all about that information you have. It's how you use that information. Are you going to use that information to beat that technician up over the head? Right? In which case, if you do, they're going to quit listening, and then you're not doing any good. You're not making any impact. You're not making any change in behaviors, right? Also, it's going to help you improve on future projects, because if you learn to do it right, my dad always used to say, if you think knowledge is expensive, try stupidity. Yeah, the old man was smarter than most people I knew that had college educations, and yet he never made it out of grade school, and he owned his own trucking company. The man was super smart. So it helps you with performance on future projects, because the better you perform, the more you can be sharp with your prices, the more projects you're going to win, and the more customer satisfaction you're going to have. Again, so it's a win-win-win. And doing QA inspections also helps you build that relationship with the customer. And it does that because it gives you the opportunity to go back to the customer. Anytime you can be in front of the customer is an opportunity to build that relationship. I used to say that I would never be a salesman in our industry. Everybody is a salesman in our industry. You heard me right. You, the technician, you are a salesman. When you're meeting with that customer, you are the face of the company. The Mr. Apprentice, Mr. Installer, who's only have a couple years experience. When a customer comes to talk to you, you are a salesman for the company. I hear this all the time. But Chuck, I'm just an installer. So do I really have to wear a company shirt? Do I really have to have it clean? Why can't I just wear the same one over and over again and have holes and tears and rips on it? Because you are representing the company. I'm not saying that you have to go out and press your shirts, but at least be clean, be presentable, be professional looking, right? And that helps build that relationship with the customer. When you look at QA inspections, it really depends on who's performing the QA. Now, I suggest that you, Mr. ICT owner, operations manager who's listening to this show, you should have somebody that you trust within your organization who knows how to do it right, who can't be bullied around by the installers and the technicians, do QA inspections. But there's different perspectives. The different inspectors will be looking for different things, right? I've worked for customers in the past where they actually had a QA inspector come out and looked at our work afterwards. Or they hired a third independent party to come out and do that work. Again, from an end user's perspective, what are they really doing? They're really making sure that you did the work that they hired you for, right? They're gonna make sure that you did. If they hired you to do 100 cables, they're gonna make sure that you put in 100 cables and that you did them right, and they're making sure that you follow the codes, follow the standards, and more importantly, did you follow the scope of work? The scope of work that you're contracted to do. That's where the meat and the potatoes really hits the road. Yes, we always follow codes and standards, but interestingly, I saw a TikTok video the other day of somebody actually proposing that you don't follow codes. I'm telling you right now, if you don't follow codes, and if somebody gets injured because you didn't follow codes, you personally can be held liable for that. You personally can be held liable for that. So you should be always following the code. When an end user does a QA inspection, it's also going to verify that very expensive investment they made in the company or in the cable plant, they're getting. Because let's be honest, when a customer's budgeting for that new office building, they think about how much does the furniture cost. They think about how much does the carpet cost and the construction costs, and how much do the new computers cost and the new servers. But they generally don't really think about cabling. But nothing will impact a network more than network cabling not functioning the way it's supposed to and causing downtime. It's one of those things, again, where there's hidden costs, right? When you go out there to fix that down location for that customer, yes, they're paying you to come fix it. So you really should be doing it as fast as possible. But on the flip side of that customer's the person that they're supposed to be using that telephone or that computer to make money or make revenue for the company can't be doing that because their equipment is not working. So you really should be doing QA inspections. And it gives that customer peace of mind. that they know that the cable plant's going to work the way that it's supposed to. Now, those who know me in my day job know that I work for a manufacturer. This podcast thing is my side gig. I do this because I want to make this industry better. So I work for one of the manufacturers. And so from my manufacturer's perspective, right, again, it's going to make sure that there's codes and standards are followed, but it's also going to verify that that contractor who's in their program has the ability to do the cable plant correctly. Because if they don't, the manufacturer could lose that customer. The manufacturer doesn't lose that customer. So by making sure that their contractors are doing right, it's also going to minimize the amount of warranty claims that they may get submitted against them. So they have a stake in this as well. But most of the manufacturers that I've ever dealt with in the past as a project manager don't actively go out and usually inspect projects. If you know a manufacturer who has as a rule goes out and inspects projects, put that in the comment section. Let us know who that is, because that's a good quality manufacturer right there. Most manufacturers will only go out and do QA inspections when the customer reaches out to them and says, hey, there's a problem. We really need to have you come out and look at this, because there's a trust between the manufacturer and their contractor and their program. So that warranty, if it's being done by the manufacturer's representative, is verifying that the manufacturer's interests are indeed taken care of. Now, there's a lot of things for doing QA inspections, right? So the first thing I really want to talk about is, what do you do in order to make sure that you have a good quality inspection, that you don't forget to look at anything. And here's the important thing. You've got to be consistent with all of your QA inspections. You have to be consistent. Again, what I mean by that is, especially if you have more than one crew, right? And the way you do this is you develop a standardized form. So that standardized form, you just kind of work your way through it, and you can break it down into different sections: horizontal cabling, backbone cabling, all different kinds of things. So that way, when you go through, it's literally just like a checkbox. My son's an airline pilot. He flies. He doesn't fly for the commercial airlines anymore. He actually flies for one of the carriers who does cargo. He flies a 757. And even though he's got thousands of hours of experience, he goes through a checklist every single time, even though he might have flown that particular plane 1,000 times, and he knows it by heart. There's a checklist that makes sure you go through and make sure they check everything. So if you create a checklist when you do your QA inspection, you ensure that you don't miss anything. So you have that standardized QA form, and there are several places where you can find pre-made standardized QA forms. I could even make one for you if you're interested. If you are, just reach out to me. I'll make you one. But that's going to help you make sure that you have a standardized process or standardized way of looking at the forms. And what that does also from a company perspective is it makes sure that there's no favoritism. Every project manager, every operations manager has their favorite crews. They're going to tell you they don't, but I'm going to tell you right now, they do. They do have their favorite crews. It happens. They work together along with one crew long enough that they trust them, and they'll give them a little bit more leeway. With a standardized form, then everybody's getting inspected the exact same way. The flip side of that is, when you have a QA form or any kind of a process form, you have to have some kind of a best practice already written up to explain how to do that process and what they should look for, right? Again, because you really should be training, like I said, you need to identify that one person within your company to do QA inspections. But you also got to be thinking about growth. What if that person wants to become an estimator or project manager, an operations manager? You should always be training the next person behind that, right? So that's what that best practice does. It sets that clear definition, helps them train that next person coming up behind them. And if you make that best practice part of the documentation that anybody has access to, then any foreman or any lead technician, if they're worried about, there's a QA inspector coming out, what's he going to look at? You can hand them, here's the best practice form, and then they will know exactly what it is that they're going to be looking for, right? They know that it's going to be done. I always also suggest I've said this in many, many classes. The three most important things in our industry are documentation, documentation, and documentation. So that's what that form does. It's documenting that. It's documenting that process. And don't make it just a checkbox. Also, when you make your sections, like one section for the backbone, one section for the horizontal, provide enough room for them to put comments. Okay, that's it's all part of that documentation. And I also suggest, especially nowadays, everybody's got a cell phone. Everybody's got a cell phone. Take digital pictures and then make that part of the QA process. Take pictures of not just the bad work. Also take pictures of the good work. Take pictures of the good work as well. I'll explain why in just a second. Because when you do that, when you get back to the office, you're going to go through that and you go, oh man, I totally missed that. And that's going to help you make your QA even more accurate, right? You want to make sure that it's accurate. You want to make sure that it's fair. You want to make sure that it's tough, right? You don't want to make it easy. What I'm saying is don't be hard on the person that you're inspecting, but be consistent, be fair, and that raises the performance of the entire company up, right? So what do? It really depends on what area that you really go look at. Let's say, for example, you go look in the telecom room. When you go in the telecom room, this is why you want a really experienced person doing this. You want a RCDD. You want a Bixby technician or some installer who's been around for 10, 15, 20 years who may not have that certification. Somebody who has a lot of experience. Back up. Not a lot of experience, the right experience. The right experience, the attention to detail, and they know how it has to be done. So when you go into that, for example, the telecom room, what are some of the things that you can look at? And this is all not a inclusive list, but what are some of the things that you can look at? You can look at the ladder rack, right? The ladder rack, does it have the proper amount of supports? For example, a cable tray. Most times they're going to tell you that it's got to be supported no more than 5 feet in length between supports and no more than, I think, 2 feet within each end of a joint. Generally, that means 3 supports per section of cable tray. That cable tray also, you got to make sure that the rungs are installed correctly. It's not a ladder rack, it's a cable tray, right? So there's a difference between the way ladder rack is installed and cable tray is installed. Just it's all where the rungs are sitting. Also, make sure that if they cut any ends off that ladder rack, did they do something to protect those ends? Because those ends can be sharp, and that can injure somebody. For example, you might want to put on rubber caps or an end closing kit. And then you might want to shift your direction. Again, this where that form helps you because it can remind you to look at all this stuff because nobody, and even myself, nobody can remember everything to look at in the telecom room or on a whole entire project. You will miss something. That QA form helps you to not miss those things. When you go looking at cable inside of conduit, right? Are there bushings on the end of that conduit? If it's a grounding cable going into that conduit, did they also strap the conduit to the bonding conductor on both sides? See, again, things you don't necessarily think about. Is that sleeve, the fire stop sleeve or slot, is it installed correctly? Did they do it per the UL drawings? Did they are they within the fill percentages? If they're within the fill percentage, then you're good to go. What are the fill percentages? What UL drawing did they use? What UL drawing did the estimator or the project manager provide for them to do that? If the person out in the field had to make a field judgment and they used one, which one did they use? And did they install it per that UL drawing? These are all things that you need to ask as a quality inspector. You need to make sure you look at EMI separations. You need to make sure that there's enough separation between any electrical equipment inside that telecom room. I know it's not supposed to be in there. But let's be honest. There are some times that you're going to come across stuff that will have it in there. And you need to make sure that you separate it because the best way to get rid of get rid of EMI, not fire stopping, is to separate. Keep away from the electrical interference so that way it helps reduce that. Right? Then look at the racks. Are they bolted to the ground? Are all four, is the pedestal, is there 4 bolts holding that securely? Are they tight? Are they snug? I've seen guys sometimes will take they'll take a drop-in anchor, they'll drill a hole, put that drop-in anchor inside there, screw in a piece of all thread, then put a lock washer and then a bolt, and then forget to cut the top off the all thread, flush with the top of the bolt. Those are little things like that that people miss. Look at the patch panels. Are they all level? Are they even on the sides? Nothing's worse when you see patch panels that that they didn't pay attention. They just kind of slapped them on there haphazardly. Is everything labeled? Do the labels on there neatly? I saw a picture the other day, and the guy was actually saying, he said, "Look at the work that I did," and he was looking for praise. And quite a few people, and rightfully so, quite a few people blast him about his labeling, because instead of doing one long strip and having it and doing the labels on a long strip, he did a one short piece of label over top of each port. So as you can imagine, they weren't all the same height. They weren't all level. I mean, other than that, it looked good. But again, when a customer goes in, I didn't tell you this, but most customers, equate quality visually. Visually. Yeah, they want a copy of the test results. Yes, they want it to work, but they want it to look good too. If it doesn't look good, they're going to be quicker to say, "Hey, there's a warranty issue. You need to come out here and fix this. You need to come out here and fix this." And then when you get done, and when you do your QA inspection, you can do QA inspections at different parts or different times during the project. As a matter of fact, I highly recommend for your projects that are gonna go longer than 3-4 weeks, that you go out and you do at least a QA a week. And then that way, when you got in that first week, you're not going to be looking at the telecom rooms because they haven't built them yet. You're going to be focusing on the horizontal pathways. Are the J hooks the right amount of separation? Right? Did the cable get painted? Right? That's a huge code violation, and most manufacturers won't warranty that. If you're installing consolidation points, were they installed correctly? When the cable is supported in the ceiling, is it laying on any of the other trades, like the HVAC ductwork, the fire sprinkler suppression systems? Right? If it's laying on that stuff, there's problems there. So if you're doing that QA inspection at that time, then you can address it. Then when you come back the next week, yeah, they're going to be further along. They might actually start dressing out the closet. Well, you can QA then dressing out the closet, but now you can also go back. Here's the key to be successful with QA inspections: follow up. Follow up. Go back and make sure that they did what you told them to do. I mentioned I was a QA inspector for a large contractor, well known with the United States. It was the largest privately held largest privately held cable contractor in the United States when I was working for them. I don't know if they still are or not, but they were huge. They had 50 some offices across the United States. They were huge. And my footprint was responsible for everything east of the Mississippi. I was for the Eastern Division. So I was doing a QA inspection in Jacksonville, Florida. And some some of our guys were putting up ladder rack in the telecom room. And they were using the triangle brackets that support it to the wall. Now, when you mount a triangle bracket to the wall is supposed to have plywood on it, 3/4 inch AC grade plywood, securely fastened to the wall. But those triangle brackets also should be securely anchored to the wall. Galvanized anchors with maybe with fender washers. Well, the crew had actually attached the triangle brackets to the plywood wall with, ready for this, drywall screws. And then they put the ladder rack on top of that, and then they had the cable sitting in that cable tray, or the ladder rack, and it was supporting all that weight. Those drywall screws aren't meant to support that kind of a weight load. So when I did the inspection, I noted that, put that in the comment section, that they had to change out all the drywall screws with lag bolts. When I went back 2 weeks later to do a follow-up inspection, I've verified that they indeed followed that recommendation from the first one. And guess what? They didn't. And one of them actually failed. Luckily, it wasn't a catastrophic fail, but catastrophical. That's a Chuckism right there. Todd, I'm stealing your stuff. I'm coming up with new words on my own. Yeah, it wasn't a catastrophe, but it definitely caused some damage to the cable tray system, ladder rack system, and also the cabling. Had they followed the QA inspection right out of the gate, then they probably wouldn't have had an issue. Further on down the project, they might be out there terminating jacks out on the floor. When you're looking at those jacks, some things that you might want to look at is, are they all mounted at the same height? Are they level? Are there any fingerprints on the wall? Are they the same height as the electrical receptacles? Did they remember to put the labels on? And this can also be applied towards MUTOAs. The multi-user outlet, multi-user telecommunications outlet assembly. There it is. One of the most common acronyms out there, and I just did a brain fart on it. It even happens to the best of us. I do the acronym challenge every day on LinkedIn, and sometimes I even still forget acronyms sometimes. Multi-user telecommunications outlet assembly. Yeah, is that labeled? Right? Is it installed correctly? Is the MUTOA mounted on permanent building structure? Is that MUTOA at least 50 feet away from the horizontal cross connect? Again, these are all simple things that you can really make sure that you look for if you have that QA form. And you can look at the backbone cables, the horizontal cables. You can look at every facet of the job. By the time you get John, every facet of that project will have been inspected. Might have been done at one inspection at the end, or better, the best way to do it is, like I said, multiple inspections once a week across that project, because that would give you time to fix it. Now that when you've done this QA inspection, you've got this documentation. What do you do with this? So the first thing you want to do with it is you're going to want to review this with the technician itself. Go to the technician, because they know you're the QA inspector. They know that you're there. They're already going to be a little predisposed, a little anxious about you being there anyway, because you're there to find things they did wrong. But when you review that, always start off with the positive things. Hey, I really love the way you did the cable dressing in the closet. It looks really nice. I love how you did this. I love how you did that. Start off with a good positive comments. And then when you talk about the stuff that they need to be fixed, don't come back and say, what were you doing? What were you thinking? Oh my God, you idiot. You're a Bixie technician. You should know better. No. What should you do? Say, hey, I noticed how you supported that cable tray in the telecom room. That's probably not the best way. Those drywall screws are probably going to fail. Let's replace those out with some galvanized screws. Okay, and let's do that in the future, so that way it can provide the weight. See, it's all in how you approach it. If I'd have just gone in there and said, "You idiots, you put in drywall screws. What are you doing? It's going to fail. It's going to cost the company money." They said, "Oh, he's just a company man looking out for the company interest. He doesn't care about us." No, make it about training them. Training them. Now, here's another thing you need to do when you're doing QA inspections, and a lot of people will tell you this is crazy. Review the QA inspection with the customer. When you're doing a project, call the customer and say, "Hey, look, I did my QA inspection this week. I would love to sit down with you for 15, 20 minutes and just kind of go over the QA form with you, what I found and what we're doing." It's even easier in today's environment with all these virtual meeting tools we have now, Teams and Zoom and everything else. You can do it via virtually and just email the document. There's no reason not to be doing this face to face. Again, same thing. Start off with the positives of, hey, the crews are doing really good. They're right on schedule. They're doing this right. They're cleaning up afterwards. I did notice some deficiencies while I was there. And here's the deficiencies that I found. Now, this is where controversy comes in. Somebody says, don't tell the customer that. I'm telling you, tell them that. Tell them that, because then they realize you are making sure you're not there just a pencil pusher to push this through. You are there to make sure that this thing is done and done right. And you have the customer's interest at heart. As a result of doing QA inspections, I've done projects before. I've been awarded projects before when I was an estimator for that company, where we were not the cheapest. We were not the cheapest project. We were not the cheapest bidder. Sorry, it's getting late. I'm doing this 9:30 at night. We were not the cheapest contractor submitted price, but because they knew we were going to be inspecting it, because they knew we would come out and they would give us the project, even though we weren't the cheapest. That's what I'm talking about. It builds a relationship with the customer. Anytime you can get in front of the customer, that helps build that relationship. And here's what this does. You're educating the customer. You're educating the customer. And that means if for some reason, if they don't select you on a future project, when they go out and look at the cable plant that's being done by your competitor, if your competitor is not having a QA process or a QA inspection being done, and your customer now knows, oh, you're really not supposed to be using drywall screws for that angle support. You're educating the customer. And again, that way they can make sure that they do it. You should also track all this information somehow. And with computers, it's easy to do databases and stuff. And what you can do with that is you can actually recognize people who are doing projects well and reward them for that. Or if you have one particular lead foreman or crew person who keeps doing the same mistake over and over again, you can identify something there for them to help change or be trained. So there's benefits all the way around for doing QA inspections, all the way around. Now, one thing I didn't mention before you do any QA inspection, if you're going to be a QA inspector, make sure that you have a copy of the scope of work. Make sure you read that scope of work. You know what's in it, forwards and backwards, upside down. Because I'm going to tell you right now, that project foreman, that lead technician, they sure know what's in it. And if you go out there and you start trying to bust their chops and you're wrong, you're going to lose credibility. You better make sure you know that scope of work. That's why you got to pick somebody who's knowledgeable in industry practices. So now all they got to learn is just the scope of work. If you just pick anybody, that's what you got to be super careful with who you pick as a QA inspector. They got to be knowledgeable and fluent, not just knowledgeable, fluent and ready to stand up to somebody when they're not doing something correct to make sure it gets done correctly. QA inspections will go a long way in building that customer confidence. It'll go a long way in building you as a person in that career. And then last thing you want to make sure that you do before you do any QA inspections, if you're going out to do a QA inspection on a construction site, because sometimes it's going to be the estimator or project manager, make sure you have the appropriate PPE, right? Personal protective equipment. You might have to have a vest. You might have to have hard hat or safety glasses. You might have to be wearing steel-toed boots. Right? You might have to participate in the general contractor safety meetings just to be able to get on the site. And by the way, if you're there, if it's on one of those kind of projects where you have a general contractor, make sure they know you are the QA inspector. That way, if they have a problem, they'll come straight to you and help you with that process and help you make sure that the project is done correctly. So there's a lot of benefits to being a QA inspector. And like I said, it was one of my favorite jobs to do. And as you can tell, because you get to use it as a training opportunity instead of beating somebody up over the head, that's what kind of really launched me into training. I love doing training. That's what I'm doing now. But I love doing QA inspections for it because then I got the best of both worlds. See, as a trainer, I'm out of the field. I'm disconnected from the field. All I do is train. When I was a QA inspector, I was out going to the job sites. I was there wearing the vest and stuff because I pulled cable for 17 years before I got into project management. As a QA inspector, you get to go out in the field, you still get to see the stuff, and you get to train at the same time. That's, to me, the best job, period, that you can have. But you may be different. Some people don't like doing it. Some people want to just become network engineers and stuff like that. And that's fine. Everybody's got a different outlook or different goal in this career field. And that's perfectly fine and dandy. But nothing will make a bigger impact than having a good, solid QA process. A best practice that says, here's what you're going to be looking for. Here's how you do it. Here's how you document it. Here's what we do with that information. And a standardized form, which helps you make sure that you don't miss anything. Right? That helps boost everybody's confidence in your company's abilities, and you win more work. Who doesn't want to win more work? I do. I want to win more work because the more work you can do, the more money you guys get to make. So I hope this show was of some benefit to you. If it did, shoot me a comment somewhere, wherever you're listening to this, either shoot me an email at chuck@letstalkcabling or comment in the YouTube box or whatever. Just let me know what you got out of this. And I might even start up a QA series. I don't know. Just kind of depends. This is all up to you. I'm still trying to explore what the information you guys want out of this podcast. So if there's something that you want me to cover that I have not covered, please, please, please let me know. And I could go into way more depth in QA inspections I went here in just this last 30 minutes. So until next time, knowledge is power.